Hey, what's going on people? It's SGZ here from the SpartanGameZone, and in this video I'll be showcasing my Grandmaster Zane build in Borderlands 3, fully updated and feature length. Now I showcased this last year but only gave you guys 3 minutes of it, so I thought as we lead up to the launch of Borderlands 4 that it's a good time to showcase these builds in all their glory. And if there's another you'd like to see more of, let me know in the comments. This is the build that I use as Zane for 90% of the gameplay clips on this channel. The reason for that is because it is just so versatile. And I'll be letting you know all the gear you'll want to cover all the bases and which weapons excel in this build. And believe me, there's tons of them. But first, let's go over the skill tree, which you can see on screen now. And don't forget, a save file is linked in the description. In this build, I run the drone and the cannon. The cannon because of how easy it is to activate anointments, and the drone so I feel a little less lonely. Of course, you can run the barrier and the cannon, which will give you more single target DPS thanks to that amp damage. Before we go over the gear portion, let's go over some key skills so you understand where the damage is coming from. Like with practically every Zane build, violent speed and violent momentum form the foundations, increasing your speed and the damage you deal the faster you move. This is where peak damage lies on Zane, so keep that in mind. We also want to grab Salvation for that lifesteal, and we only need the 1 point just because of how mayhem scaling works. Seeing red is incredibly important, allowing us to activate kill skills simply by firing off our cannon. Moving on to the orange tree, duct tape mod is a necessity, and you only ever need one. This gives us immunity from our splash damage, which is another avenue of this build. In the purple tree, Headman's Hands and Commitment are great skills for increasing our DPS, and like many of Zane's kill skills, they stack twice. Fugitive allows us to sprint and shoot at the same time, which makes it easier to hit the damage cap provided by violent speed and violent momentum. Of course, we grab Eraser because it's so damn powerful and allows us to pretty much run 2 builds at once, depending on what we feel like. And of course, we grab our man Flint for that nice 25% V2 damage while aiming down sights. Now to the gear, and we'll start with the most basic setup. That includes having an action skill start Revolter for that 200% bonus shock damage and 50% bonus fire rate for 15 seconds whenever we trigger our action skill. And because we've got the cannon with multiple charges, we can essentially have this active all the time. For class mods, we grab the Executor for its nice multitude of bonuses, the biggest being 75% crit damage and 20% cryo damage and elemental effect damage for 8 seconds after we kill an enemy. But because it's treated as a kill skill, that also will trigger anytime we activate our cannon thanks to Seeing Red. These two in tandem do a lot of heavy lifting, but we can also get even more damage through the artifact slot. The most basic choice here, the easiest to obtain, is the Pearl of Ineffable Knowledge for up to 105% bonus weapon damage, and that's a solid bonus that we can simply achieve by shooting enemies, which is something I suspect you'll be doing anyway. However, Zane doesn't benefit from gun damage as much as other characters, so there are some better alternatives here. One of those being the Company Man, which has an increased chance to drop from Herbivorous the Invincible, who you find in Darkthirst Dominion as part of the Director's Cut. This artifact rolls with 3 primary stats, which can include damage, crit damage, fire rate, mag size, reload speed, or accuracy. With the best 4, I suppose, being damage, crit damage, fire rate, and mag size, and the best 3, I'd say the 2 damage ones and grab some mag size. These primary stats roll on top of its passives, which can grant you great things like area of effect damage and mag size. It is very difficult to get a well-rolled Company Man, the one that you're looking for, so keep that in mind if you are farming Herbivorous. Otherwise, a Pearl of Ineffable Knowledge is going to do just fine. There's also the option of the Victory Rush, providing 18% V1 damage after you defeat a badass enemy, as well as 18% increased move speed. And as we know, Zane grows stronger the faster he moves, so that's another good option. For grenade mods, Zane doesn't normally throw them himself, and that's the same in this build. However, thanks to drone delivery, our Sentinel drone will. Therefore, a good choice is its purse, which you can obtain by defeating Sloth, who you can find around here in Conrad's Hold. It's nice for that debuff, but for Zane, the main point here is to make sure you grab a grenade mod to cover each of the action skill and elements. The Revolter, Pearl of Ineffable Knowledge, and Executor perform best when using non-explosive multi-projectile weapons, like the Light Show or Monarch, and of course many single projectile weapons too. However, if you want to go the splash damage route, you want to swap out a few items. You'll want to swap the Revolter for the Infernal Wish, which grants an extra projectile to each of your shots as long as there is some charge in it. It works best with slow firing single projectile weapons like rocket launchers, but will also provide increased DPS when using single projectile weapons like the Terminal Crit, although the burn effect will down you, so I don't recommend using weapons like that while mobbing, but it's perfectly fine for short stints while bossing. Back to splash damage, and you'll want your artifact to have an AoE roll in either slot 2 or 3 to also increase your area radius. This is where the Victory Rush or Company Man really comes into things, but there's another artifact too. That is the Toboggan, which, like the Snowdrift prefix on base game artifacts, increases your movement speed while you're sliding, but it also provides you with bonus amp damage for the next shot after you slide, providing you with the most one-shot potential. So if one-shotting is your jam, then you want to be using an explosive single projectile weapon, sliding and shooting for maximum damage. Things also get more complicated here thanks to Eraser, and especially when we equip the Hustler class mod. But you don't need to know what's going on, just that a lot of damage is happening. If you want to know, Eraser spawns a new projectile at the point of impact for any of your critical hits, and with the Hustler class mod, our splash damage can crit, with that crit being between 25 to 125% more powerful. On top of that, Eraser projectiles double dip in splash damage and splash damage radius, already being more powerful than the projectile that summoned them. It is a recipe for absolute destruction, as you can see. Increasing your splash damage radius is the best thing you can do here, giving your projectiles the best chance to spawn another. With all this power does come great responsibility, and that responsibility lies in you keeping yourself alive. When you've got so much splash radius going on, Duct Tape Mod will protect us from the initial explosion, but not from the dot that follows. That means if you're dealing with a lot of splash radius, you'll need to take some preventative measures. What you need to remember is to only deal damage in an element you can protect yourself from. So that means not just your gun's elements, but the elements of any anointments and equipment. Of course you'll be fine only dealing non-elemental damage, and cryo is okay too as it doesn't apply a dot. However, if you're dealing radiation damage, you'll want to equip the red suit, which you can find from Atomic around here in the Tazendir ruins. The Transformer on the other hand will protect you from all shock damage, and you can grab one from Queen Antoinette, who you can find around here in the Splinterlands. Moving on to weapons now, and sticking with the splash damage part of the build. When it comes to anointments, you'll always want action skill and splash damage if your gun deals splash damage. The Creamer is a great choice because it doesn't deal elemental damage, so you don't need to worry about downing yourself. You can get one from Junpei Gold Eater, you can find around here in the Spendopticon as part of the Handsome Jackpot DLC. The Complex route is probably the most broken gun when it comes to Eraser, and you can pick one up from the Bounty of Blood DLC from Lenny Dixon around here in Ashfall Peaks. This thing will delete absolutely everything on screen, even things out of your render distance. It's kind of insane. The Yellow Cake's another fun one which you can grab from the Cartel event by defeating Joey Ultraviolet, but you can also find it from Fishslap and Tyrone Smalllands as well. The Devil's Foursome, Freeman, Scoville, Globetrotter and Shocker are some other weapons that I've had a lot of fun abusing Eraser with. For the standard part of the build, or when you're not maximizing the splash damage potential of your weapons, when it comes to anointments, I generally like to match the element of the gun with the anointment, because the way I see it, ideally you're only targeting the one health bar type at a time, so you want to maximize your damage against that. I know that's not always possible though, so a general rule of thumb is to always have some form of radiation damage in your build. Flash is the most common health type, so fire's never a bad choice either. For bossing with weapons that don't utilize Eraser, you want to be looking at something like the Kickcharger, Sandhawk, or Tizzy. All three of these weapons are incredibly powerful and should deal to most bosses no problem. Just remember that move speed equals damage. In general mobbing situations, the Butcher, Flipper, Light Show, Monarch, even with its bipod out, Breath of the Dying, Chaos, Needle Gun, OPQ System and Roman's Call are all fantastic weapons in this build. Also, here's something I prepared earlier to cover even more weapons, and probably some I've already mentioned, so if you're looking for extra weapons, make sure to screenshot this.